Hey, what's up everybody? It's Izzy from PowerliftingToWin.com, and before I get into the meat and potatoes of this StrongLifts 5x5 review, I just want to point out that if you haven't seen the first three parts of this series, where I covered the foundational principles of powerlifting programming, critical training variables, and training organization, you need to go check those out now, because without that context, you're just going to think I'm speaking gibberish. Let's begin with our program analysis. The next target of our focus is Medi's StrongLift 5x5 program. Now, just like starting strength, StrongLift 5x5 has two separate days, okay? You have day A, where you squat for 5 sets of 5, bench for 5 sets of 5, and deadlift for 1 set of 5. Then you have day B, where you squat for 5 sets of 5 again, do overhead press for 5 sets of 5, and then barbell rows for 5 sets of 5. The days are rotated on a thrice weekly schedule. So for example, on the first week you would do day A twice and day B once, and then on the second week you would do day B twice and day A once. Now, just like starting strength, lifters are encouraged to use linear progression in strong lifts. You're instructed to add 5 pounds to every single lift per session. I don't know any other way of saying this without being blunt, so I'll just come right out with it. Medi from StrongLifts is an internet marketer who just happens to lift weights. It's not the other way around. Though he gives credit to Reg Park for first writing about 5x5, the bottom line is that all of the StrongLifts community information comes from Medi himself. After more than a decade of training, Medi is a guy who squats just over 400, can't pull 500, and doesn't bench to 300 pounds. I want to be clear, I'm not criticizing his lifting ability, I'm just pointing out the facts. Medi is not a competitive powerlifter. He's not interested in competitive powerlifting, and StrongLifts is not aimed at competitive powerlifters. In fact, if you go to the StrongLifts website, there's a ton of great free information, but you'll notice something immediately. All of it is targeted towards the general public. I mean, he titles his articles and videos things like this: learn the shocking truth about how to build muscle. He's going after your average couch potato, not serious strength enthusiasts. Now, I know none of this has any direct bearing on the quality of the program that he's presenting, but if you're going to do StrongLifts 5x5, you're undoubtedly going to be on that website reading his stuff and participating in that community. And I think you should know what you're getting yourself into and what you're being a part of. For me personally, I would never be able to fully buy into a program that was written by a guy who's not even a powerlifter. He doesn't have competitive powerlifting experience. I mean, consider that at least starting strength, written by Mark Rippetoe, well, Rippetoe pulled over 600 pounds, powerlifted for a decade, and has been coaching for 3 decades. Medi, when he made StrongLifts, was just a guy who had been lifting for a few years and read about some other guy's 5x5 program. So again, I'm not trying to go into a bash Medi kind of a thing. He seemed like a great guy, but I'm just pointing out that in terms of the context of StrongLifts 5x5, you have to understand this program is not intended for powerlifters. Because StrongLifts 5x5 is written primarily for novices, you're not going to find much in the way of a competitive plan, and that's perfectly fine, just like with starting strength. If a StrongLifts 5x5 user wanted to do a powerlifting meet, all they would have to do is skip their Friday workout, compete on Saturday, and then resume training the next week. Remember, a novice gets stronger from every workout that they do, so there's no need to go through a peaking process. I hate to sound like a broken record, but in terms of periodization, while StrongLifts 5x5 doesn't use periodization in the traditional sense of the word because it's a novice program. Remember, novices don't need specific periods of focus on technique, strength, and hypertrophy. They can just develop all of those things simultaneously. Now, in terms of programming, StrongLifts 5x5's insistence on the set of 5 is great. But because it's 5x5 instead of 3x5, you're really working in a 75 to 80% intensity range. And because of the additional 2 sets of 5, it's actually more hypertrophy oriented than starting strength. This makes it a bit less specific to powerlifting. Just like in starting strength, when you stall on strong lifts, you're supposed to take 10% of the weight off the bar and work your way back up by 5 pounds. This is technically an intermediate technique because you're introducing variety in terms of intensity. However, it's completely appropriate for a novice, and it's really the only programmatic change that you need to make during the novice phase. This said, there is one absolutely ridiculous thing about the StrongLifts 5x5 program, and that's the insistence that new lifters start with the bar. It's just beyond unnecessary. If you start with 45 pounds, which is how much the bar weighs, so no plates on the bar, and worked your way up to 185 pounds, that would be 28 workouts, or approximately 9 to 10 weeks of training. Personally, I squatted 185 by 5 by 3 on starting strength for my very first workout. If I would have had to wait 3 months before I even started challenging myself, I don't think I even would have done the program. What's the point? In terms of specificity, the same criticisms that apply to starting strength are going to apply to StrongLifts 5x5 as well. For a competitive powerlifter, you should never have a bench to press ratio of 1:1. The bench is more important, period. And while rows might be more useful to powerlifting than power cleans, still, doing 5 times as many reps of rows as deadlifts is just silly. And to top it all off, because you're doing 2 workouts of 5x5 squats for every 1 set of 5 deadlift you do, you're doing 10 times as much volume on the squat as a deadlift. That's ridiculous. In terms of overload, StrongLifts 5x5 has things handled well. StrongLifts 5x5 forces novice lifters to use linear progression. They're encouraged to add a fixed amount of weight to the bar every single session, which makes the novice go for a PR every single time they go to the gym. This is perfectly appropriate. In terms of fatigue management, StrongLifts 5x5 manages fatigue basically just by giving novices a few days off here and there. And again, that's completely appropriate because novices can recover and go through a full stress adaptation recovery cycle in just a few short days. So there's really no need for more complex variety in terms of intensity and volume. However, I would say that 5x5 is probably going to be too much squat volume for quite a few novices. Some people will handle it just fine, but for a lot of people, 5x5 squats takes more than 48 to 72 hours to recover from. And if you're doing 5x5 squats 3 times a week, that is a pretty heavy workload, and I think it's probably a bit too much for most novices. Now, in terms of individual differences, StrongLifts completely ignores this principle. Unlike starting strength, which at least encourages lifters to go at different rates of progression depending on their demographics, StrongLifts 5x5 encourages everybody to start with the bar and work up by 5 pounds. This one idea is enough to really downgrade the entire program. On our scale of good, better, best, I would rate StrongLifts as a good beginner program. Again, there's a clear lack of specificity for powerlifting. The program is aimed at your average couch potato, not a serious strength enthusiast. The biggest flaw of the program is the insistence that you start with the bar. Now, if you just ignore this advice, it actually makes the program a lot more solid. But nonetheless, it's still not optimal. Personally, I consider StrongLifts 5x5 a far inferior version of starting strength. I don't understand why anybody would be more attracted to Mehdi and his message than the actual science, the biomechanics, and the analysis that Ripito brings to the table in starting strength. If you're going to be choosing between these 2 general strength programs, I really recommend that you go with starting strength instead. However, you got to make your own decisions. StrongLifts 5x5 is free, and you're going to have to pay to get the starting strength book. So, if you guys want more information on StrongLifts 5x5, go ahead and check out stronglifts.com. If you guys found this content interesting, informative, or entertaining, please like, share, and send it out into the interwebs for me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to check out PowerliftingToWin.com for more great powerlifting information. Have a nice day.